Welcome to Tech Travels, hosted by the seasoned tech enthusiast and industry expert, Steve Woodard. With over 25 years of experience and a track record of collaborating with the brightest minds in technology, Steve is your seasoned guide through the ever-evolving world of innovation. Join us as we embark on an insightful journey exploring the past, present, and future of tech under Steve's expert guidance.
Welcome back, fellow travelers, to another exciting episode of Tech Travels. Today's expedition is going to be truly thrilling. We have the privilege of charting these digital waters with Brooks Seahorn, a true luminary in the field of innovation. Now, Brooks isn't merely just a technologist, he's an alchemy of technology. Fused with wit and fervor with his profound knowledge of cloud computing, his unique approach to education is not just merely informative, it is totally engaging, transforming intricate technical concepts into riveting tales that really do stick with you. Now, with a diverse odyssey that spans over 25 years, including crucial time spent as an Air Force contractor and distinguished qualifications from AWS and Microsoft, Brooks' story isn't just a chronicle of personal growth, but a map for navigating the tech space. So fasten your seatbelts, fellow tech travelers, as we embark on the enlightening quest through the digital terrain with none other than Brooks Seahorn. Brooks, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. And I don't know, you're old enough to remember the commercial that said, never let them see you sweat? Well, after that intro, I'm sweating already. Yikes.
So kind of tell us about your journey and how you really kind of got into technology and, the whole thing that you're working on now around supercomputing and AI. So take us on that journey.
Well, it's a fun journey because it started way back in college when I got my degree in organic chemistry. Worked for one night as a chemist, and then said, I'm done. I'm never doing this again. And that's when I kind of floated back to this thing I discovered in college called technology. I got to help out a little bit using some Perl programming and stuff like that. Just fell in love with it. And so it was a pretty big bet to make in one night to go, I'm done. I'm walking away. But that's exactly what I did. And then from there, it was just a point of learning all this technology, getting into the space, getting the tough jobs, learning how to do this stuff. Everybody wants to talk about, feeling that sense of I'm just a sort of a fraud. I don't know how I got the job. I did that for a long time, man, trying to figure out how to do this stuff. But in that space, you learn so much about how things really get done, past the theory, the hard work, and just kept working through it until finally, just one job after another, things got more complicated, more difficult, more experience, until finally one day you look around and go, wow, I can really do this stuff. And so that's how you end up doing things like this when you make rash decisions in one night at 12 o'clock in Montgomery, Alabama. So that's how I got to the space. And then it was just a point of just falling in love with it. And I think that, and you're the same as I am in this. For some reason, the technology, we just fall in love with it. Like, we want to know why it's doing what it's doing. And as the more complicated it gets, we want to know more. Like, how exactly are things working on chip and L2 cache? How exactly is this thing working with memory and paging and all that stuff? And you just fall down to this thing and you just become more passionate about it and you love it. It's lifelong learning. And I would say that, and I know you, Steve, you're the same way as on this one. It's just, we got dumb lucky. We found the thing that we love and we love doing it. And so we just keep doing it for some crazy reason. So that's how I got here. I just love the technology. There's no fancy, I got my PhD in 1970. No, nothing like that. Just falling in love with technology, continuing to play with it. And I would really say, I think there is a big sort of sorority and fraternity of people out there. We all fit into this same spot. We just love the technology. We learn about it. We get these opportunities to dive into incredible levels of depth and just put all that knowledge to good work.
It's incredible because when, in full transparency, Brooks and I know each other from working at Amazon Web Services. Your passion for technology, when I first came to AWS, when they paired us together and we went and did road shows, right?
Yeah,
it was by far probably one of the most incredible experiences I had of how you take your specific approach to technology and making it engaging, interactive, and just truly again, I use the word captivating, but seeing you work a room with other people, your love for the technology it also leads into your love for education and how you want to kind of inspire and learn, have other people follow into this whole learning trajectory, right? Tell me a little bit about this ability to captivate people when you're up there talking to people, training, education. Just tell me, like, what is it that gives you this amazing, like, superpower?
You mean the ability to violate OSHA at a whim and get up on a desk and start ranting about stuff? Yeah, I'll be happy to talk about that. No, I mean, I honestly, I've said it before, and this is one of the things, and I would encourage anyone out there listening to this podcast, if you're into technology and you love running your mouth, marry those two things together, because it's so much fun. And here's the other side about it. There's no reason why technology should be boring. It shouldn't be boring. It should be fun. It should be engaging. And we as speakers in the space, technologists in the space talking about these things, I think we kind of have a responsibility to make it a little more than just, hi. You know what I thought about, Steve? I thought specifically about, what was the SNL thing? The delicious dish. Like, the whole podcast should just be delicious dish, that kind of thing. And people do this, but there's no reason to do it. It's exciting. It's fun. So pour your passion into it. And what you'll find is that, in fact, you'll enjoy it a lot more when you do speak about it. And then for me personally, it's, because I've got the decades of experience, I've seen what technology has gone from and to. Some of it bad, I will admit. Some of it fantastic, though. And so when you see these changes continuing to go forward and you sort of embrace them and go with them, it just wells up inside of you as a happiness and a joy that you want to share with everyone. And then I would say, and this is something, Steve, you saw this on display several times, I'm sure, with me. It's just this, I feel like this responsibility that when I'm explaining something to somebody, I've really got to put a lot of heart behind it, to engage them, to make them want to be part of the conversation, to want to learn more. Because if you don't, it's just boring and nobody cares. Put a little bit of heart into it. And again, it's going to be a downhill effect. You're going to enjoy speaking about it more. They're going to be enjoying learning about it more. And it just goes round and round and round. And that's everything from, climbing up on desks, kicking over a chair where I nearly broke my foot because I had a person in the audience go, EC2s are ephemeral. And I freaked out at that simple mention of stuff like that, doing different voices, all those sorts of things. But it's always, and this is the one thing, let me just end this question on that. Everybody, if you want to do it, go do it. It's fantastic. Make sure you got your tech chops together, because nothing is worse than doing something silly and then being technically wrong at the same time. Don't do it.
That's a hard spot to be in. So with that said, let's talk like a little bit. You mentioned heart, right? And I think that, I think AI needs a little bit of some heart right now. So let's put a little bit of love into some AI right now. So again, more and more tools, more and more of this shift towards AI adoption. Everyone wants to think about AI as a tool, not as a replacement. Share some thoughts on kind of your perspective on how this is now going to impact decision making, creativity, and most importantly, kind of how you start to see this across different industry sectors and how it probably are going to impact jobs.
Let me answer. Let me actually start with the end, because I think the end's a very important point, because I've heard a lot of people say how it's going to impact jobs. Am I going to lose my job, et cetera, et cetera. I would say in the short term, there's no threat to you, in most cases, losing your job to AI. What you're going to do, though, is possibly lose it to somebody who knows how to use AI. And that's the problem for anyone who's not using it. There's been so many cases when you can just switch over to something like Chat, Gemini, whatever system you want to talk about, quickly get an answer to a question, or get a more sort of lucid way of explaining something like, hey, Chat, can you make this sound a little more reasonable? And then it can create something for you. I think it's a great tool in that space. But that goes back to the very beginning of what you said, the heart of it. What did you tell the system to generate for you? And did you put something truly unique in there? Or did you just say, hey, I need a great article for LinkedIn telling me about AI and how it can help me find a job? Copy, paste. No, you did nothing. You did nothing. Stop doing that. Here's a better idea. Start with that, and then start sort of adding your own style to it, your own words. Put in things that aren't expected in there, because that's the thing that AI really can't do yet. It really can't. Don't get me wrong. It can be kind of creative, and it can kind of push you in some unique directions, and I like that about it. But that's how you should use it, as a tool, not as a foundation upon which you are building things. I don't think we're there yet. So, sort of in short, talking about the whole thing, use it as a tool. Use it as a tool in your job. My goodness. Steve, my wife and I have been talking about getting a brand new mattress. Yes, I used AI to help me start making this decision. I know it sounds stupid, but you can say to it, hey, what would you recommend based on the information that you have? It might give you a direction that you never thought of or a brand you didn't think of. So that's why I say to people right now, AI, it's a tool. Use it as a tool. But then you need to become part of that loop. When you get the answer, it's not a copy paste. It's a copy out to something else. Touch it up, put your own style, your own unusual, sort of personality into it. Then maybe that's what you needed to. So right now, use it as a tool. Use it as a replacement, not as a replacement. Use it as a tool. One of the things I've been really interested in is particularly the music AI space. Since I'm a musician, feeding in some music to it and saying, hey, give me something unusual, at this particular point in the song, and then let it put something in weird. And then 9 times out of 10, it's garbage, get rid of. But every once in a while, it'll do something, and I'll be like, that's interesting. I didn't think of that. And it's not my style. Mm-hmm. It sounds great, but it's not my style. But I'll go ahead and embrace it anyway. That's where the power of it comes in as a tool, not as a foundation. Use it as a tool. You
mentioned this, and this is something I haven't explored yet, so I hope that we can double click on this. The ability to have it work as somewhat as a kind of a co-pilot when you're basically using something like music. And I've not had a chance to touch on this. I've talked about technology, but the music aspect, I'm very interested to hear more about it. So as a musician, what are you kind of putting into AI? What are you expecting from it? And then what are you getting back when you say interesting?
Well, there's 2 systems I'm working with. I can't name either of them. I'm sorry. I'm under NDA right now. So sorry. Can't name them. But I will say this. They will be releasing in the third quarter of this year. They will be releasing. I have been told. And here's what you can do with them. And this is the cool part, Steve. You can feed in MP3. You can feed in actual music, notation music to the system. Let it look at it. And then you start prompting it from an AI tool point of view, saying, look, what would you suggest a different, like when we get to this 4th measure right here, I want to do something unusual with the bass line. And it'll like come up with something scale wise. It makes sense. In fact, I've even seen a case where one of the systems even made suggestion of a note that wasn't on scale, which I don't know if anybody's ever out there has ever heard, but it's kind of like you listen to somebody sing, and then it's like, you kind of hear that half step down. It suggested the half step down. And I was like, that is so smart, because the best musicians pull crap like that. They will take that one note that doesn't quite make sense, then they'll pull it back up. It's called a pressure release. And so these things are being built into these systems. The thing about it, though, I think, Steve, is this. It comes back to it still being a tool. You've got to write a song that kind of it's got a nice hook, it's got a nice feel to it, it's got a nice beat, whatever the case is. Let AI look at it and say, hey, I got an idea. You might want to try this. And again, 9 times out of 10, you're like, garbage. And so you just get rid of it. But every once in a while, it may make a suggestion that you really like. And suddenly you want to add that to the bass line, to the guitar, to the drums, whatever the case may be. And so I think in that space, it's going to come along quite a bit. Now, I will say this. Neither one of these are Amazon products, because I've had people who've asked me, who've tried to figure out, is it the Amazon thing? It's like, nope, it's not that keyboard thing. It is
Deep
not.
Composer.
Yes, it's not Deep Composer. It is not Deep Composer. It's literally this one company. What they do is they've just been feeding music into it, and feeding music into it, and feeding music into it, letting the model build itself, running really large AI jobs on it so we can start to learn about style. And that's the other part about it too, is that I think is really fascinating, is watching AI learn about style, understanding blues, Delta blues, Southwestern blues, even what we call it Portlandia blues. It's kind of like that 90s sort of grunge, but there's a bit of a bluesiness to it, like somebody found a Coke bottle and started sliding it up and down the guitar, that sort of thing. It's learning about these things so you can be very specific in it. And I think, and I'm going to make a prediction on your show, okay? I'm going to go ahead and make a prediction. At least no more than a year from now, we should be able to, can you hear the background noise?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. That's my dog, Sam. He's very excited about AI music. So you heard me talking about it. there will come a point, I think, honestly, where we can get, I guess what I would call more than anything else, streams of style when it comes to music.
That's incredible. I mean, I want to know more about I think if you were to start feeding it tons and tons and tons of music across different genres, there is definitely no lack of music that it could probably absorb, right? Just like, just like a natural language model is going out, basically providing an index of all the text written, and it's looking and evaluating different forms of language and patterns. But music is interesting because you almost think of it like it's your sound engineer, it's your producer, like the people who would kind of be kind of in that space, right? When they would
Mm-hmm.
hear an artist and they would say, well, why don't you try to tweak it like this or make it sound like this? And then the artist would say, okay, that sounds great. Okay, now play it again right quick here, and then play it again with this. And the next thing you know, you've got, like again, you hear all the stories around how certain artists like Van Halen or Pink Floyd or you name any one
Mm-hmm.
of your greats,
Mm-hmm.
Def Leppard, how
Yep.
they were able to change the style. Rick Rubin with Red Hot Chili Peppers was a great example of, well, what do you got over there? Well, I've got this notebook. I've got some poems written down. Well, why don't you put a couple of those into a lyric and then see if you can actually put a bass line to that? And the next thing you know, you've got a couple of hits. And they were like, well, we didn't even know about it. So sounds like AI is almost kind of becoming that companion where it's starting to
Mm-hmm.
kind of at least start to work as a way to help you kind of work on some sort of production, give you some input, suggestions for new styles, and give you something to also as a creator to think about creating.
It's the idea of that sound engineer in a box is what it comes down to. Can we, instead of paying for a, because like right now, studio time runs about, I think for a 12-hour session right now, you're going to pay about $1,000. So, with an engineer studio, I don't know if that even includes mixing anymore. So about $1,000. Could you put that into a box? Could you sit there and actually record it, push it to the box put everything together for you, just like an engineer would? Now, I think once again, we're in that space we started about in the beginning of AI as a tool. It could be a great tool initially for a sound engineer. Is it going to replace a sound engineer? Not yet. There's no way to put Rick Rubin in a box. It isn't going to happen. There's no way to put, Verdine White of Earth, Wind, and Fire in a box. It just isn't going to happen. Or like I think about, like Jack Strafford of Wolfpack, anybody like that. The folks from Dirty Loops, good gravy. It's not going to happen. But I think what you said is exactly right. It's that idea of having a co-pilot sitting next to you that you can kind of go over and say, hey, what'd you think about that? And I think that's fun because to me, that becomes the heart of an AI system where you kind of go, hey, Chewy, what do you want to listen to? Raw. And he sits, he puts it over on Western. It's like, well, I didn't think of that, but great idea. Thanks, buddy. As you fly along through space.
It's incredible. I think about all the different artists that are kind of cross genres, right? They're mixing. I think a friend of mine introduced me to something that was almost kind of like a Western with slash crossover with rap. And it was almost like, so I thought it was very interesting. And I think probably that there will be new genres, right, of music that tend to probably will come out and will evolve from some sort of kind of like AI music entity where it can kind of help you build upon that. I mean, I think you could be a one-man band at that point, right?
Absolutely. I mean, if you can play all the instruments fairly well and you know what you're doing, yeah, you can absolutely do that. I mean, and the thing is that I think in that space, and this is where I get excited about it, it would allow that person to be. And what I mean by that is this. You've got somebody out there who's an incredible musician. They can do incredible work. However, they don't have the money. They don't have the friends. They don't have the other friends who give a care. They're this one person on an island. As I used to say to people, it was me in technology back in the early 90s here in central Alabama. I was on an island, y'all. I felt like I was on an island just reaching out. Is there anybody out there doing technology? So for that person to have the AI system come alongside and say, or for them to say, hey, I've written this really neat guitar bit. What do you think? And it goes, hey, I can add a bass line to that. Or I can give you a backing drum track that I think would work with that. And then you say to it, let's make it a little more bluesy or a little more upbeat. Or, hey, let's make it dance, whatever the case is. And then put all that stuff together. That's where I think AI is going to get really, really fun.
Interesting. I mentioned the idea to a previous guest around digital authenticity, and as a creator, as you're basically creating, is that you're creating something that's very unique and specific to your own creative talents. How do you think about AI in this space around digital authenticity? being able to say, no, I was able to create this. I'm able to
Mm-hmm.
then create some sort of cryptographic key or an NFT.
Mm-hmm.
What's your ideas around digital authenticity in this space with regards to creators,
I
musicians?
I think it's going to be incredibly difficult to figure this one out, and let me explain why. I am what they call a muddy player. Okay, like when I play bass, when I play acoustic, I'm very muddy. I don't have clean technique. I prefer muddy technique. Very much more of a Delta bluesy. You can really hear the strings chiming on the frets and stuff like that. I like that. For me, that makes it easier in the space because would AI accidentally put garbage in? It could. I guess you could kind of trick it into it. If you think about bands like Disclosure, if you listen very carefully to songs like Latch, you can hear pop and hiss in the background being injected by the engineer to give it a record sound. So you can inject noise and stuff like that, but you can tell when it's been injected and when somebody's just classically doing it. The problem I have, though, Steve, is when you move into bands like, and there's a fantastic band out there called Dirty Loops. Most people have never heard of them. They are probably one of the best bands in the world right now. Technically, the best bass player, singer, drummer in the world. They play almost perfectly. Their drummer, I think, has an atomic clock in his head. He's so perfectly. Now, how do you inject artifacts into that? Well, they would never inject artifacts. They're super clean players, which means I think AI would have an easier time doing that because it wouldn't have to come up with the unusual. It could get that sort of thing. So when you want to inject that authenticity, the only way I see it happening is going to have to be in the form of some sort of metadata, which, again, because it's ones and zeros on a wire, I can fake that too. I can add that in and go, no, look, there's that digital signature. This was truly, Steve and the Woodards. Okay, so I'm going to be your bass player in Steve and the Woodards. Okay, so we've recorded a song. We've put our key in there. Da 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 da. And then finally, I mean, there are authenticity mechanisms out there that are possible to use. They're actually quite old. Simply doing things like MD5 hash sums, saying, look, this was truly me playing this. You can't recreate it. I can't recreate it. It's a unique piece in and of itself. But as far as being able to say, because I've had this problem myself, I played music before, played it back, and somebody said, "That's you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's me." Like, no. I'm like, "Yeah." And so then you get into that whole space. You can't prove it unless you pull down the instruments and start playing it. So, heck, maybe this is the resurgence of stadium concerts. I think it could be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, absolutely. I think I'm all for it. Right? Is that you've got the resurgence of concerts coming back again?
Yep.
It's interesting to talk about music. I'd love to kind of like to use the term. Let me riff on this for a second. Right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Laughter, humor, and comedy, are okay. So I've been finding that it's been AI has been pretty mediocre when it comes to kind of these spaces here.
Oh yeah.
I don't think comedians, and especially with comedians and things like that, being able to feel like they're ever going to get outs by AI.
No.
It's like AI is going to tell me a joke better than.
Yeah, I just don't think. Well, the thing is with comedy, it doesn't make sense. There was a great bit, and I think I can't remember if it was Jerry Seinfeld who said it, but he was going to go teach a class on comedy, and basically he started out saying, "You're not funny. If you're in this class to learn how to be, you're not funny. Like, I can't explain to you how funny works." I remember this comedian named Klaus Myers. He was on King of Queens and a few other shows. He's a German comedian, and he started his bit with this joke about, and he had this really thick German accent, and he would say something like, one of the greatest problems in my career. And keep in mind, you're hearing this in just, it's this German sort of, I can't do a German accent, but he's saying it with this German accent, and he says, people have wondered, can somebody who's from Germany be funny? And then he kind of pauses and he goes, well, let me assure you. And the place would just come apart laughing at this absolutely insidious voice saying this. How is that funny? How can I teach AI that that's funny? I don't think you can. At least I don't know yet if you can. And I don't know if AI and the modeling can figure it out. So I think in that space, that's going to be a tough one. I think we could have a lot of really bad AI comedians coming out who just don't know what they're doing, and they're going to bomb and they're going to get booed off stage because the quiescence of a lot of things that we do as human beings that I don't think AI has got yet springs from this strange place where things just don't make sense. Like, like one of the things I've always told people is when it comes to listening to online music, they want to make suggestions, turn it off. Turn it off, or they will take you down an avenue where you will never hear a different song. You will never hear things like there's a I can't remember the name of the band, but it was called Gunpowder Chant was the name of the song. Everybody look it up. Gunpowder Chant starts off with a didgeridoo that goes into an acoustic guitar that goes into some sort of strange music that doesn't make sense. I never would have found it listening to regular AI generated suggestions. So I think at the core, we're not there yet. And I don't know if we have the technology to do it yet, where AI can truly do the unexpected and strange and start to understand. And the thing is that it may never happen. It may be impossible for AI to figure out or act like a human. Good on us. That means we just have another fun partner in the world that we can all work with. And that's how I prefer to think of it. It's not going to be Terminator, y'all. It's smarter than that. It would never come to the front door and ask for Sarah Connor. Okay. It's just going to make a stupid suggestion. You're going to go, okay, and go right along with it. So in that space, I don't think we're going to get there because that quiescence of what it makes to be a human being, that strange creative thing it's not there yet. It's just not.
So there's no Skynet moment yet.
No, there's no Skynet. Skynet's never going to be funny. The Whomper going all the way back to War Games. Whomper will never be funny. Whomper will never make great music. Everybody, don't worry about it.
That's funny. You mentioned War Games. You're talking about the 1982 movie with Matthew Broderick, right?
Oh yeah, the Whomper.
Yeah, because he was basically a kid. He was a kid who was essentially just tapping into some sort of DARPA project where they were simulating some sort of war game stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. And now that I've been in that space, I find it even funnier because now I'm like, how did the kid get a dial-up into the sipper? I mean, you can't do that. What is this nonsense? But yeah, that was the whole thing. And for everybody who doesn't know what we're talking about, this is back in the cool day where you'd take literally the old phone that you would hold up to your head, you'd put it in the suction cups so it'd get the good connection, and then you had this really awful connection over to this thing they called Whomper, which was their super intelligence at that time, which was whatever. But I think that to me is interesting because if you go back and you now look at that system had what we think we have now. That idea of this thinking thing that can think things through and go, there's no point to nuclear war. There are no winners. Would you like to play a nice game of chess? I think is how the movie actually ends, if I remember correctly. It runs through every simulation and then through its own creativity goes, you can't win this. I can't figure this out. I'm walking away. Let's go play a game. So going all the way back to your joke thing, that thing that we keep thinking these machines are going to have, I don't think we're there yet. And to be honest with you, I think it's going to take a technology shift away from what we're currently using now. What that is, I don't know. It could be moving away from digital to analog type chips. So you get that differentiation. In fact, there's a great startup in Austin, Texas, working on that exact thing using analog chips for machine learning to get that unusual sort of responses versus digital, which is very, of course, 1 and 0. Mm-hmm. And no, maybe that's where we start getting funny AI bots.
Mixing it with old analog chips or some sort of mix of old school and new school technology.
Yeah, let me hook up my old Fender amp and run it into my computer via USB for some little bit of machine learning.
Well, I mean, maybe you can also plug in my old Commodore 64.
Boy, mm-hmm.
And then maybe
I got
we
a VIC
can
20.
see, and we can. 20. Yeah, so you got a Fender amp, you got a Commodore 64, and a microphone and a bass guitar.
And then suddenly from that, you actually get Skynet. But Skynet at that point becomes that thing because of the unusualness of what you injected into the system. Because now it's not 1 and 0. It's kind of, and maybe that's where quantum can help us. You start to get that unusual. You start to get the personality. You start to get the unusualness, actual comedy, real music, a real sort of partner in work. Now that's when we could lose our jobs. But I don't know what we're going to do if we lose our jobs. So I can't go beyond that. Beyond that's a wall. I'm sorry. At that point, I am now Paul Atreides in the desert, and I can't see beyond the Nexus.
Wow. That is incredible.
Dune, just dropped a Dune reference right in the middle of the podcast.
Well, the second movie is going to be coming out pretty soon, so maybe we'll see.
Oh, it's out.
This is how much I've been living in the basement lately. Is the fact that there's this huge movie that just came out. I have absolutely no awareness that it actually dropped, and it's in theaters now. It's in theaters now.
It's in theaters now. It's absolutely in theaters now. And by the way, a little trivia for everybody out there. Notice there's no computers in Dune. If you don't know the backstory, it's AI. AI comes along, causes a disaster. There is literally a cultural revolution against AI. And now there's no more what they call thinking computers. So it's that old story, that old story of the machines are going to get us.
They're coming for you.
No, they're not. No, they're not. I just need them to go outside and mow the lawn. That'd be great.
There we go. Man, Brooks, this has been an amazing conversation. I have enjoyed being able to riff with you, especially on the music idea. I didn't think we'd go down this path, but you know what? This has been.
I'm glad we did.
This has been awesome.
I'm glad we did and I would encourage anybody out there, if you're into music, if you just like music, there are systems out there. Again, I can't name the two that I'm using, that I'm getting to Copilot. I wish I could because they are fantastic. Look for third quarter announcements from some companies out there in this space. And try these tools and just play with them. You may find, and this is something that somebody, one of the testers said, saying, it's not that I think my music's great to the world, but I really like it. I really like listening to it because it's my music. And there is something about AI and creativity coming along beside you to create your own thing. It may not be what the world wants to see, but you'll love seeing it and you'll love hearing it. So get involved in these sorts of things, folks. And again, and Steve's been really smart about pointing this out to y'all in the other podcasts, so I hope y'all are listening to all of them, is this idea of this is a tool. This is something you should be learning. Go out there and learn to use it. Embrace it. It's more fun than you think. And go watch Dune 2.
Words of wisdom from the amazing Brooks Seahorn. Brooks, it has been an absolute delight to have you on the podcast today. Thanks so much for taking the time. Enjoyed having you on the show, and definitely want to have you back again to talk more about your progression of music and AI and how it's been for you and what you're learning along the way. Interesting to hear.
And we'll do some demos next time. We will do demos.
Come on the show and give us a little bit of a sample.
We will do demos.
Dude, Brooks, where can we follow you? Where can we find you?
I am on LinkedIn. I am on X, and those are the main two places I'm posting anything up right now as I begin my new travels into supercomputers and some of the biggest companies in the world trying to solve the biggest problems out there. So check them out.
Ladies and gentlemen, the amazing Brooks Seahorn. Brooks, thanks so much.
Thanks.